Some people don't realize what they have until it's ripped from their hands. And some men don't understand the value of a good woman until she's no longer standing beside them, holding them up, believing in them when the whole world has given up. This is the story of a man who threw away gold because he thought it was worthless. A man who destroyed his own family with his bare hands, word by poisonous word. And when karma finally came knocking at his door, it came with a lesson so brutal, so devastating, that it would haunt him for the rest of his life. Charles Benson sat alone in his wheelchair, staring at the 4 empty walls of his house. The woman he'd loved was gone. The woman he'd replaced her with had walked out without looking back. His children could barely stand to be in the same room with him. And his legs, the legs that used to carry him confidently through corporate hallways and into fancy restaurants, couldn't support him anymore. How does a man who once had everything end up with absolutely nothing? How does someone who climbed from poverty to success lose it all in what feels like the blink of an eye? The answer is devastating in its simplicity. Pride, cruelty, betrayal, and the foolish belief that love could be measured by the numbers on a scale or the size of a woman's dress. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. To truly understand how Charles lost everything, you need to know how he got it all in the first place. You need to know about Amelia Richardson, the woman he mocked in front of friends, the woman he betrayed with another, the woman whose strength, sacrifice, and unwavering faith built him into the successful man he became, and the woman whose absence would eventually destroy him completely, leaving him broken in ways that went far deeper than physical. This isn't just a story about one marriage falling apart. This isn't just about infidelity or divorce or family drama. This is about what happens when we take good people for granted. It's about the terrible price of disrespect and arrogance. It's about whether some mistakes are so catastrophic that they can never truly be undone, no matter how much remorse follows. And it's about karma. Real karma. Not the internet kind, but the kind that shows up in your life when you least expect it and teaches you lessons you'll never forget. By the end of this story, you'll have to ask yourself one critical question. If you were Amelia, if you had sacrificed everything for someone who then tore you apart piece by piece, could you find it in your heart to forgive? Or would you walk away forever and never look back, letting that person drown in the ocean of their own regret? Amelia Richardson was 35 years old when her entire world came crashing down around her. She was a big woman, a plus-size woman, the kind of woman who would never grace the cover of a fashion magazine or be featured in a fitness influencer's Instagram feed. She had soft curves, thick arms that jiggled when she moved, a round belly that she'd learned to accept after 2 pregnancies, and thighs that touched when she walked. Society had 1,000 cruel words for women like her, but those who truly knew Amelia knew something society couldn't see. Her smile could light up the darkest room. Her laughter was infectious, the kind that made everyone around her start laughing too, even if they didn't know what was funny. Her hugs felt like coming home after a long, exhausting journey, and her heart, God, her heart was bigger and more beautiful than her body could ever contain. She met Charles Benson when they were both young, broke, and struggling to survive in a world that seemed determined to keep them down. He was tall, dark, handsome in that classic way that made women do double takes, and incredibly intelligent. But intelligence doesn't pay bills, and Charles couldn't catch a break no matter how hard he tried. Life had knocked him down so many times that he'd stopped believing good things could happen to people like him. They lived together in a cramped apartment in one of Detroit's roughest neighborhoods, the kind of place where gunshots at night were as common as car alarms and where hope went to die. Their apartment had one tiny bedroom with walls so thin you could hear the neighbors arguing. The bathroom had a leaking faucet that dripped constantly, a sound that became the soundtrack to their poverty. The kitchen was so small that only one person could stand in it at a time, and the ancient refrigerator made noises like it was about to explode any minute. The whole place felt like it was held together with duct tape and prayers. The walls were stained and cracked. The heater barely worked during Michigan's brutal winters, leaving them huddled under every blanket they owned. And every single month, on the first day, they struggled and scraped and stressed about making rent. But through all of it, through every hardship and setback and disappointment, Amelia never complained. Not once. When Charles came home with his shoulders slumped and his eyes red from another failed job interview, another door slammed in his face, another rejection that felt like a personal attack on his worth as a man, Amelia would wrap her soft arms around him tight and hold him like he was the most precious thing in the world. "Baby, listen to me," she would say, her voice steady and full of faith. "Don't worry. Don't you dare give up. One day, and I promise you this day is coming, everything is going to change. You're going to walk into a big office wearing a suit and tie that makes you look like $1,000,000. You're going to drive your own car, not borrow anyone's or take the bus. People are going to call you sir and actually mean it with respect. I believe in you, Charles. I believe in you with everything I have." Charles would manage a weak smile, wanting to believe but beaten down by reality. "Amen, baby. I hope you're right. But look at us. Look at where we are. Look at this place." And Amelia would cup his face with her soft, chubby hands and look into his eyes with intensity. "Where we are right now doesn't define us. It doesn't matter. Who we are inside, what we're made of, that's what matters. And you, Charles Benson, you are made of something special. I know you're going places. I can feel it in my soul." They had 2 beautiful children who were their whole world. Precious, an 8-year-old girl with her mother's warm brown eyes and gentle spirit, and Junior, a 5-year-old boy who looked exactly like his father and idolized him completely. Life was brutally hard, the kind of hard that ages you faster than time should allow. But Amelia carried the weight of their entire family on her broad shoulders, like a lioness protecting her cubs from predators. She woke up every morning at 5 o'clock, when the world was still dark and quiet, to work the early shift at Morrison's Diner, a greasy spoon on the east side where she flipped pancakes and served coffee to tired truckers, factory workers, and people who worked the graveyard shift and needed breakfast before going home to sleep. After her shift ended at 2 in the afternoon, she would rush across town to clean offices in the business district downtown, scrubbing toilets and vacuuming floors and emptying trash cans for companies whose employees made more in a week than she made in a month. On weekends, when most people were resting or spending time with family, Amelia did laundry for neighbors who would pay her $10 or $15 to wash, dry, and fold their clothes because they were too busy or too tired to do it themselves. Every single dollar she earned, every crumpled bill and handful of coins, she brought home and put directly into Charles's hands. "Charles, baby, take this," she would say, pressing the money into his palm with urgency. "Go buy a newspaper so you can check the classified ads. Keep searching for jobs. Send out more applications. Make more phone calls. Don't you dare give up on yourself, because I'm never giving up on you. Your breakthrough is coming, I promise you." Charles felt deeply ashamed taking money from his wife. Letting her work herself to exhaustion while he sat at home filling out applications that went nowhere and making phone calls that never got returned. But what choice did he have? He'd sent out literally hundreds of resumes. He'd knocked on doors until his knuckles were bruised. He'd begged and pleaded for opportunities, for just one chance to prove himself. But every single door slammed shut in his face. Every interview ended with the same empty words that meant nothing. "We'll call you if something opens up." They never called. One evening, Amelia burst through their apartment door with an energy that lit up the dim space, her face glowing with excitement. "Charles, baby, get up right now. Go put on your best shirt, the blue one I ironed last week. Comb your hair. Make yourself look sharp. There's an interview happening today, right now, at Henderson Financial downtown. My friend Keisha, you remember her from the diner? Her cousin works there, and he told her they're hiring for their finance department. You have to go. You have to go right now, baby. This could be it." Charles sighed heavily, the weight of repeated rejection pressing down on him. "Amelia, sweetheart, those corporate people, they don't want guys like me. I've been trying for almost 2 years. I'm tired. I'm so damn tired of getting my hopes up, just to have them crushed again." But Amelia planted herself in front of him with her hands on her wide hips, fire blazing in her eyes. "If you don't get up and go to that interview right now, I swear to God Almighty, I will physically drag you there myself. Do you hear me? You want to stay stuck in this roach-infested apartment forever? You want our children growing up thinking this is all life has to offer? You are a man with a brilliant mind, Charles. You have talent. You have skills. Stop hiding them. Stop being afraid. Go out there and show those people exactly who you are." Her fire, her absolute refusal to let him give up, lit something inside him that he thought had died. He went to that interview, and exactly 2 weeks later, an envelope arrived in their rusty mailbox. Charles had gotten the job. When Amelia read the letter, she screamed so loud that neighbors came running to see if someone was being murdered. She literally danced around their tiny apartment like a child, rolling on the floor, clapping her hands, shouting praises to God, crying tears of pure joy and relief. "Thank you, Jesus. Thank you, thank you, thank you. My husband has a job. My baby has a real job." From that day forward, their lives began to slowly, gradually change. Charles was now working in a real office with fluorescent lights and cubicles, earning a steady paycheck every 2 weeks that had his name on it. Amelia continued working at the diner because they needed every dollar, but now she added evening catering gigs for parties and events, using her natural cooking talent to make extra money. Together, working as a team the way they always had, they were finally surviving and even starting to do a little bit better than just survive. Charles wasn't just smart. He was brilliant, the kind of brilliant that couldn't be hidden once given a platform. Once he got his foot in the door at Henderson Financial, once he had that opportunity that Amelia had fought so hard to get him to take, his talent became undeniable to everyone around him. He solved complex problems that other employees with fancy degrees couldn't figure out. He worked late without being asked, stayed on weekends without complaint, went above and beyond in everything he touched. His bosses noticed immediately. Within 5 years, 5 years of dedication and hard work, and proving himself every single day, Charles had climbed from an entry-level position, making barely above minimum wage, to a senior management role with a 6-figure salary that would have seemed impossible back in that tiny apartment. They moved out of their cramped place in the dangerous neighborhood and into a beautiful 3-bedroom house in the suburbs with a lawn and a garage, and neighbors who smiled and said good morning. Amelia wept openly the day they got the keys, standing in the empty living room and just crying as Charles watched her with confusion. She walked over to the doorframe and touched it gently, reverently, as if it were holy. "Thank you, God," she whispered through her tears. "Thank you for bringing us through the valley. Thank you for not giving up on us." Charles hugged her and said with a slight laugh, "You're a strange woman, baby, thanking God for a house like it's a miracle." Amelia turned to him with tears streaming down her face and smiled. "I'm not strange. I'm grateful. There's a difference." To understand how Charles could throw away a woman like Amelia, how he could take someone who had given him everything and treat her like garbage, you have to go all the way back to the beginning. Back to when their love was pure and uncomplicated. Back to before money changed him. Back to when he saw her for who she really was, instead of what she looked like. It was a freezing November evening in Detroit, 15 years before everything fell apart. Amelia was 20 years old, working 2 jobs while taking classes at community college because that was the only education she could afford. She was studying business administration, with dreams of one day opening her own catering company, a dream that seemed impossibly far away, but that she held on to with determination. After her morning classes, she worked the lunch and dinner shift at Rosie's Diner, a classic American diner with red vinyl booths and a jukebox that still played actual records. At night, after the diner closed, she stocked shelves at a 24-hour grocery store, organizing cans and boxes while the rest of the world slept. Life was exhausting, relentless, but Amelia had learned early that if you wanted something in this world, nobody was going to hand it to you. Charles was 22, fresh out of college with a bachelor's degree in finance and absolutely zero job prospects. He'd been searching for work for 8 long, demoralizing months. Every rejection letter felt like another nail being hammered into the coffin of his dreams. That particular evening, he walked into Rosie's Diner with his last 5 crumpled dollar bills in his pocket, planning to buy 1 cup of coffee and nurse it for as long as possible to escape the bitter cold outside and delay returning to his cousin's basement, where he'd been living rent-free out of pure charity and pity. Amelia was his waitress that night. She noticed him immediately, not because he was handsome, though he was, but because of how defeated he looked. His shoulders were slumped, his eyes were red and exhausted. He sat in the corner booth like he was trying to disappear. When she brought his coffee, she gave him her warmest smile. "Rough day?" Charles looked up, genuinely surprised that anyone cared enough to ask. "Rough year, actually. Rough life, if I'm being honest." Without being invited, without asking permission, Amelia slid into the booth across from him. "You look like you need to talk about it. I'm a pretty good listener." There was something about her openness, her genuine kindness without judgment, that made Charles's walls crumble. He told her everything. About graduating with honors but not being able to find work. About the hundreds of applications he'd sent out that disappeared into black holes. About the interviews that went nowhere. About the mounting debt that kept him awake at night. About the shame of being 22 years old with a college degree and still living in his cousin's basement like a failure. He spilled his guts to this complete stranger, and she listened to every word without interrupting, without judging, without offering empty platitudes. When he finally finished, emotionally exhausted from laying his soul bare, Amelia said something that would change the trajectory of his entire life. "You know what I think? I think you're exactly where you're supposed to be right now. I know that sounds crazy when you're struggling, but sometimes God makes us wait in the wilderness, Because he's preparing something amazing, something we're not ready for yet. Don't give up on yourself. Your time is coming. I can feel it. Charles stared at her, this beautiful, confident, kind woman who had no reason to believe in him but somehow did anyway. You really believe that? You don't even know me. I know enough, she said, with absolute certainty. I can see it in your eyes. You're not a quitter. You're just tired. But tired doesn't mean defeated. Then she did something that shocked him completely. She stood up, went back to the kitchen, and returned with a full meal. Pancakes, scrambled eggs, bacon, hash browns, and toast. When Charles tried to pull out his $5 to pay, she waved him off. This one's on me. Consider it an investment in your future success. That night, Charles left Rosie's diner with a full stomach and something far more valuable: hope. Real hope that maybe, just maybe, things could get better. He came back to the diner the next day, and the day after that, and the day after that. At first, he told himself it was just for the good coffee and the warm atmosphere, but he knew the truth. He was coming back to see Amelia. They started talking during her breaks, sitting in that same corner booth for hours. She told him about her dreams of starting a catering business, about growing up poor but determined, about her philosophy that your circumstances don't define your destiny. He told her about his ambitions to work in corporate finance, about wanting to make his deceased mother proud, about feeling like the world had written him off before he'd even had a chance. They laughed together. They shared their fears. They connected on a level that Charles had never experienced with anyone. 6 months later, they were in love. It happened gradually and then all at once. One day they were friends, and the next day, Charles couldn't imagine his life without her. When he finally worked up the courage to tell Amelia he wanted to marry her, she cried tears of joy that wouldn't stop. "Are you absolutely sure?" she asked through her tears. "Baby, I need you to be sure. I'm not skinny like those girls you see in magazines. I'm not wealthy. I can't offer you anything except my heart and my loyalty." Charles pulled her close, holding her tight against his chest, and said words he meant with every fiber of his being. "Amelia, I don't want magazine girls. I don't want perfect. I want you. You're real. You're strong. You believe in me when I don't even believe in myself. That's worth more than any body type, any amount of money, anything." They got married 3 months later in a small, simple ceremony at City Hall. Amelia wore a white dress she'd found at a thrift store for $25. Charles wore his only suit, the one he'd worn to job interviews that went nowhere. They had 15 guests total, a handful of friends and the family members who hadn't written them off as a doomed couple. But the love in that small room could have filled an entire stadium. After the ceremony, they moved into the tiny apartment in Detroit's roughest neighborhood. It wasn't much, barely 400 square feet of living space, but it was theirs, their first home together. Those early years tested them in ways they never could have anticipated. There were nights when they went to bed hungry because they had to choose between buying food and keeping the electricity on. There were mornings when Amelia walked 3 miles to work in the snow because they couldn't afford bus fare and their car had broken down months ago with no money to fix it. There were days when Charles sat at their wobbly kitchen table and cried from frustration and shame because he couldn't provide for his wife the way a man should. But through all of it, through every hardship and setback and moment of despair, Amelia never once complained. She never blamed Charles for their situation. She never made him feel like less of a man because money was tight. Instead, She encouraged him constantly, relentlessly, with an optimism that seemed impossible given their circumstances. "Baby, listen to me," she would say, rubbing his back when he broke down. "I know this is hard. I know it feels like we're drowning and nobody's throwing us a life raft, but I'm not going anywhere. I'm not leaving you. We're in this together, for better or worse, remember? And when you finally make it, and you will make it, we're going to look back at these days and thank God for teaching us how to fight, how to persevere, how to appreciate what we have." When Precious was born, their firstborn daughter, their precious miracle, money got even tighter. Medical bills piled up. Diapers and formula weren't cheap. Charles picked up odd jobs wherever he could find them. Landscaping in the summer heat, moving furniture for people who were relocating, anything that paid cash under the table. Amelia worked until 2 days before giving birth, ignoring her swollen ankles and constant back pain because they desperately needed her income. She went back to work exactly 2 weeks after delivery because they literally couldn't afford for her to take more time off. But she never, not even once, made Charles feel like he was failing as a husband or father. "You're not a failure," she would tell him when he cried in frustration. "You're not. You're a man who's been knocked down by life over and over. But you know what? You're still standing. You're still trying. You're still fighting. That makes you a warrior in my eyes." 3 years later, Junior was born. Now they had 2 mouths to feed on an income that could barely support 2 people, let alone 4. The neighbors started gossiping, talking in hushed voices that weren't actually hushed enough. "That man can't even take care of his own family. Why is his wife working 3 jobs while he sits at home playing Mr. Mom? What kind of man is that?" Amelia heard every word of the gossip, but she never let Charles hear it. She defended him fiercely to anyone who dared criticize. "My husband is looking for work. He's trying every single day. And when he finally finds the right opportunity, when his time comes, all of y'all are going to see exactly who Charles Benson really is. Mark my words." And she was right. When Charles finally landed that job at Henderson Financial, everything began to shift. He was hungry to prove himself, to show the world what he could do, to make up for all the years of struggle. He worked 16-hour days without complaint. He studied financial reports and market trends late into the night. He climbed the corporate ladder with determination and skill. And with every promotion, every raise, every professional success, Amelia cheered louder than anyone in his corner. "I told you, baby!" she would shout, literally dancing around their apartment with joy. "I told you your time was coming. I told you God had a plan." For the first few years of his success, Charles remained the humble, grateful man Amelia had married. He remembered the struggle vividly. He remembered the nights Amelia went without dinner so he could eat. He remembered her working herself to exhaustion to support his dreams. He treated her like an absolute queen, showering her with appreciation and love. But slowly, so gradually that neither of them noticed it happening until it was too late, something began to change. The more money Charles made, the more he interacted with a completely different world. A world where appearances mattered more than character. Where image was everything and substance was optional. Where success was measured by what you looked like, what you drove, where you lived, who you knew. His colleagues threw elaborate parties where the wives looked like they'd stepped off runways or out of fitness magazines. They wore designer dresses that cost more than Amelia used to make in a month. They talked about personal trainers, juice cleanses, cosmetic procedures, and boutique fitness classes. They were polished, Perfect, Instagram ready at all times. And then there was Amelia, still wearing simple, practical clothes from department store sales, still carrying the extra weight from 2 pregnancies that she'd never quite lost, still looking like the woman who used to flip pancakes at a diner, because that's exactly who she was. At first, Charles tried desperately to ignore the contrast. He tried to focus on who Amelia was inside, on everything she'd done for him, on the depth of her character. But the more time he spent in this new world of wealth and status, the more he started seeing his wife differently. Not as the woman who had saved him, but as the woman who didn't fit into his new life. Not as his partner and biggest supporter, but as someone who embarrassed him in front of his peers. The comments started small, almost innocent. "Baby, maybe we should get you a gym membership. It would be good for your health." Then they evolved, became sharper. "Amelia, you really should try to lose some weight. It's not healthy carrying all that extra weight around." Eventually, they turned cruel. "Do you have to wear that dress? You look like you're busting out of it. Can't you dress more appropriately for your size?" Amelia tried everything. She really did try. She cut carbs completely, living on salads and grilled chicken until she felt like she was wasting away. She woke up at 4:30 in the morning to jog before work, pushing her body until her knees hurt. She wore shapewear under her clothes that squeezed so tight she could barely breathe. She spent money they didn't need to spend on weight loss programs and diet pills and anything that promised results. But her body didn't transform fast enough for Charles's growing impatience. And eventually, his patience disappeared entirely. One night, after attending a company dinner where all the other executives had wives who looked like models or actresses, Charles came home absolutely fuming with anger and embarrassment. He slammed the door so hard it rattled the frame. "Do you have any idea how it feels?" he shouted at Amelia before she could even say hello. "Do you know what it's like to be the only man in that entire room with a fat wife? People were staring at us, Amelia. I could see them judging me, whispering about us. It was humiliating." Amelia's eyes filled with tears instantly. "Charles, baby, I'm trying my best. I'm doing everything I can. Well, your best isn't good enough," he screamed, cutting her off viciously. "If you actually cared about me, about this marriage, you would try harder. But you don't. You're lazy and you're fat and you're an embarrassment." That was the night something fundamental broke inside Amelia. Because in that moment, staring at the man she'd sacrificed everything for, she realized something devastating. Her husband didn't just dislike her body. He didn't see her as a person anymore. He saw her as a problem to be solved, an embarrassment to be hidden, a mistake to be corrected. But Amelia still loved him. Despite the cruelty, despite the pain that cut deeper than any knife, despite the way he looked at her with disgust instead of affection, she still held on to hope. She still prayed every single night for their marriage to survive, for Charles to remember who she was and what they'd built together. She had absolutely no idea that while she was on her knees praying for their marriage, Charles was already planning to destroy it. Charles told himself he wasn't planning to cheat. He genuinely believed that at first. He convinced himself that he was just networking, just making professional connections, just being friendly with colleagues. But temptation is a patient hunter. It doesn't announce itself loudly. It creeps in quietly, disguised as something harmless, something innocent, until you're already caught in its trap. Her name was Vanessa Carter, and she was everything Amelia wasn't. She was 30 years old, recently divorced from a wealthy tech entrepreneur, and worked as a senior sales executive in the same downtown office building where Charles's company had recently relocated. She was slim in that way that took serious dedication, the kind of body that required personal trainers and restrictive eating and hours at the gym. She was always impeccably dressed in form-fitting business suits with designer labels, always wearing heels that made her legs look impossibly long, always put together like she was ready for a photo shoot at any moment. Her hair was always styled perfectly, whether in sleek straight styles or carefully crafted curls. Her makeup was always flawless, highlighting features that didn't really need highlighting. And she had this way about her, this confidence that bordered on arrogance, that made men feel like they were the most important, most interesting person in the world when she turned her attention to them. They first met at a professional networking event held at an upscale hotel downtown, the kind of event where everyone dressed their best and handed out business cards and talked about synergy and leveraging opportunities. Charles was standing by the bar, nursing an expensive whiskey he'd ordered to look sophisticated, when Vanessa approached with a smile that seemed to light up her entire face. "You're Charles Benson, right?" she said, extending a perfectly manicured hand. "The guy who single-handedly turned around the Henderson portfolio in 6 months and saved the company millions? I've heard amazing things about you." Charles tried not to look too pleased, but he couldn't help the small smile that crept onto his face. "Word travels fast in this industry, I guess." "Only when it's impressive," she said smoothly, her voice like honey. "I'm Vanessa Carter. I work over at Sterling Global. I would absolutely love to pick your brains sometime about investment strategies and portfolio management. Maybe we could grab coffee?" They talked for over an hour that night, standing by that bar while the networking event swirled around them unnoticed. Charles found himself laughing more freely than he had in months. Vanessa was witty, intelligent, quick with responses, and she had this way of looking at him that made him feel seen. Not just seen, but admired, appreciated, valued. When he finally got home that night around 11, Amelia was already asleep on the couch in her work clothes, completely exhausted from pulling a double shift at the diner, plus an evening catering gig. Charles barely glanced at her as he walked past to the bedroom. Over the next several weeks, Charles and Vanessa started meeting regularly. First it was coffee, quick 30-minute breaks during the workday. Then it became lunch, hour-long sessions at nice restaurants where they discussed everything from market trends to personal philosophies. Then it evolved to after-work drinks, where the conversation shifted from professional to personal, where they talked about their marriages, their disappointments, their desires. Just colleagues, Charles told himself every single time. Just professional networking. This is what successful people do. But deep down, in a place he refused to acknowledge consciously, he knew it was more than that. He felt butterflies when her name appeared on his phone screen. He found excuses to walk past her building. He started caring intensely about how he looked, buying new cologne that cost more than his first month's rent at that tiny apartment, getting fresh haircuts every week instead of every month, hitting the gym religiously at 5 in the morning. Amelia noticed immediately. She wasn't stupid. She'd known this man for 15 years. "Baby, you look really nice today," she said one morning, her voice careful. "Do you have an important meeting or something?" "Just trying to maintain a professional appearance," Charles replied, avoiding her eyes as he adjusted his new tie. Image matters in corporate finance. One Thursday evening, Vanessa sent Charles a text message that made his heart race. "Want to come over to my place tonight? We could discuss that potential business partnership over wine. Nothing formal, just relax and talk." Charles stared at that message for a full minute, his finger hovering over the keyboard. He knew, absolutely knew, that going to her apartment alone was crossing a line. Every fiber of his moral being told him this was wrong, that this was how affairs started, that he was playing with fire. But he typed back anyway. Sure. What time? When he arrived at Vanessa's luxury apartment in a high-rise building with a doorman and marble floors in the lobby, she opened the door wearing a black silk robe that left very little to imagination and gave him a knowing smile that said she knew exactly what she was doing. "Come in," she purred, stepping aside. "Make yourself comfortable. I opened a really nice Cabernet." They didn't talk about business, not even for 5 minutes. They talked about everything else instead, about their failing marriages, about feeling unappreciated, about desires that weren't being fulfilled, about wondering if there was something more out there. The wine flowed. The conversation got more intimate, and when Vanessa leaned in close and kissed him softly, Charles didn't pull away. He should have, but he didn't. That night, he crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. He betrayed the woman who had given him absolutely everything. When he finally came home at 2 a.m, Amelia was sitting in the dark living room waiting for him, her face illuminated only by the streetlight coming through the window. "Where were you, Charles?" Her voice was quiet, controlled, but he could hear the fear underneath. "Working late," he lied smoothly, the words coming easier than they should have. "Big project with a tight deadline. I told you about it." Amelia's voice trembled slightly. "Charles, please tell me the truth. Is there someone else? Because you've been different lately. Distant. You smell like perfume that isn't mine. You come home late. You barely look at me anymore. Please, just tell me the truth." Something inside Charles snapped. Instead of confessing, instead of being honest, he exploded with defensive anger. "Are you seriously interrogating me right now? I'm out there busting my ass 16 hours a day to provide for this family, to give you and the kids everything you need, and you're accusing me of cheating? Look at yourself, Amelia. Seriously, look at yourself. You're sitting here in sweatpants with your hair a mess. You think any man would want to come home to this? You think I'd risk my career, my reputation, everything I've built, for some random woman?" Amelia recoiled like she'd been physically slapped. "I'm sorry," she whispered, tears already forming. "I'm sorry. I just worry because I love you so much, and I feel like I'm losing you." "Well, maybe worry less about conspiracy theories and more about taking care of yourself," Charles snapped viciously. "Look at how you look. You're overweight. You're always sweating. You smell like grease from that diner. You disgust me. Don't ever question me again about where I've been or what I'm doing." He stormed past her into the bedroom and slammed the door so hard a picture fell off the wall in the hallway. Amelia sat in that dark living room and cried silently, her body shaking, until the sun came up. That night marked a fundamental shift in their marriage. Charles stopped even pretending to care anymore. He came home late multiple times a week, always smelling like expensive perfume. He barely ate the meals Amelia cooked, claiming he'd already eaten at business dinners. He spent money recklessly on things they didn't need. Designer watches, expensive shoes, tech gadgets, always justifying it as necessary for his image. Vanessa quickly evolved from mistress to obsession. Charles loved everything about being with her. She made him feel important, powerful, desirable, successful. With her, he wasn't Charles from the rough neighborhood who'd struggled for years. He was Charles the executive, the successful man who deserved a beautiful woman on his arm. "When are you finally going to leave her?" Vanessa asked one evening as they lay in her bed. She traced lazy circles on his chest with her perfectly manicured finger. "You talk about your wife like she's this burden. So why are you still keeping her around?" Charles hesitated, the first flicker of guilt trying to surface. "It's complicated, baby. There are kids involved. I have to think about Precious and Junior." Vanessa rolled her eyes dramatically and sat up. "Kids adjust. Kids are resilient. You know what isn't resilient? Your happiness. You deserve to be happy, Charles. You've worked so hard to get where you are. You need a woman who matches your success, who fits into your world. And let's be completely honest here. That fat woman you're married to doesn't fit anywhere near your life anymore." "You're right," Charles admitted, the words coming easier than they should have. "I'm not happy. I haven't been happy in years. Every time I look at her, I just feel disappointed." Vanessa leaned in close, her voice seductive and manipulative. "Then do something about it. Stop being a coward. Choose yourself for once. Choose us. Choose the life you actually want instead of the life you settled for when you were broke and desperate." Charles nodded slowly, already imagining his life without Amelia, without the constant reminder of where he'd come from. "You're right. I need to end it. Soon. Very soon." Back at home, the tension had become suffocating. Amelia tried everything she could think of to save her marriage, to reconnect with the man she'd loved for 15 years. She cooked all his favorite meals, spending hours in the kitchen preparing dishes he used to devour. But Charles barely touched them, claiming he wasn't hungry or he'd already eaten. She bought new lingerie even though it made her feel uncomfortable and self-conscious about her body, hoping it might rekindle something. But Charles looked at her with barely disguised disgust and turned away. She wrote him love notes, heartfelt messages about their history together, about how much she loved him, about wanting to fight for their marriage. She left them in his briefcase, on his car dashboard, on the bathroom mirror. He never acknowledged a single one. She suggested date nights, couples counseling, weekend getaways, anything to reconnect. He shot down every suggestion with barely concealed impatience. One Saturday morning, Amelia woke up at dawn with renewed determination. She was going to make this work. She prepared an elaborate breakfast, pancakes, eggs cooked exactly how Charles liked them, bacon, fresh fruit, orange juice, coffee. She dressed their children nicely in their Sunday clothes, even though it wasn't Sunday. She set the dining room table beautifully with their good dishes and even put out flowers. Then she waited with a hopeful smile, her heart full of desperate optimism. When Charles finally emerged from the bedroom around 9, dressed in expensive workout clothes from brands that cost more than their old monthly rent, he barely glanced at the elaborate spread she'd prepared with so much love. "What's all this?" he asked, his tone already annoyed. "I thought we could have breakfast together as a family," Amelia said softly, her smile starting to falter. "We haven't done that in so long, baby. I miss us. The kids miss us being together." Charles checked his designer watch impatiently. "I have a personal training session in 30 minutes. I can't just skip it, Amelia. I pay a lot of money for that trainer. Can't you skip it just this once?" Amelia pleaded, her voice breaking slightly. "Please, Charles, just this once, for our family." Something dark crossed Charles's face. All the resentment, all the contempt he'd been building up, came pouring out in a torrent of cruelty. Maybe if you went to a training session once in a while instead of eating everything in sight, you wouldn't look the way you do. Seriously, Amelia, look at yourself. It's 9 in the morning and you're already sweating like you ran a marathon. You're disgusting. You repulse me. I can barely stand to look at you anymore. The children, Precious and Junior, froze completely. Precious's fork, loaded with pancake, clattered onto her plate with a sound that seemed impossibly loud in the sudden silence. Junior's eyes immediately filled with tears. Amelia's hands began shaking uncontrollably as she tried desperately to hold back sobs. "Charles, please," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Please don't talk to me like that in front of the children. Please, they're listening. They're hearing every word." "I'll talk however I want in my own house," Charles shot back coldly, grabbing his car keys from the counter. "Maybe if you were less pathetic, I'd treat you with more respect." He walked out without another word, slamming the door behind him with enough force to rattle the windows. The moment he was gone, Amelia completely broke down. She collapsed into her chair and sobbed, her whole body shaking with grief. Precious immediately ran to her mother, wrapping her small arms around her as tight as she could. "Mommy, please don't cry," Precious begged, her own tears streaming down her face. "Please stop crying." Junior climbed into Amelia's lap despite being almost too big for it, holding onto her neck. "I think Daddy's mean now," he whispered into her ear. "You're beautiful, Mommy. Don't listen to him. He's wrong." But Amelia couldn't stop crying. The dam had finally broken after months of holding everything in, and she couldn't stop the flood of pain and heartbreak and devastating realization that the man she'd loved, the man she'd sacrificed everything for, truly hated her. If you think what Charles did was wrong, comment "Wives deserve respect" below. Let's see who stands for what's right. What Amelia didn't know, what she couldn't possibly have known in that moment of complete heartbreak, was that Charles wasn't at any gym. He was at Vanessa's apartment again, lying in her bed, planning his next move. Vanessa ran her fingers through his hair lazily and whispered with calculated manipulation, "You need to end things with her properly. This back and forth isn't fair to anyone, especially not to me. I'm not going to keep being the other woman forever." Charles nodded, his resolve hardening. "You're right. I'll do it soon. I promise." "How soon is soon?" Vanessa pressed, her eyes flashing with impatience. "Soon," he repeated, but this time with more conviction. "Very soon." But weeks passed, and soon never came. Because as much as Charles wanted to leave, as much as he claimed to hate his life with Amelia, something kept holding him back. Maybe it was guilt trying to break through his armor of resentment. Maybe it was fear of what people would say, how it would look professionally if he divorced his wife for a younger woman. Maybe it was concern about child support and splitting assets. Or maybe, buried so deep he couldn't consciously access it, a tiny part of him still remembered who Amelia really was and what she'd meant to him. But that tiny voice was getting quieter every day, and Vanessa's influence was getting stronger and more persuasive. The breaking point, the moment when everything finally exploded, came on a Tuesday evening 2 weeks later, and it would change everything forever. Amelia couldn't take it anymore. The sleepless nights spent staring at the ceiling while Charles slept peacefully beside her, or more often, didn't come home at all. The constant verbal abuse disguised as honesty. The smell of another woman's expensive perfume on her husband's clothes. A scent that haunted her even when he wasn't around. The looks he gave her, filled with contempt and disgust, that made her feel invisible and worthless. She'd reached her breaking point, and she needed help desperately. There was only one person she could think of to turn to: Charles's older brother, Marcus Benson. Marcus was 42 years old, a high school history teacher who'd been married to his college sweetheart for 22 years. Unlike Charles, who'd let success change him fundamentally, Marcus had stayed humble and grounded even as his life improved. He lived by principles, not appearances. He'd always had a soft spot for Amelia, had always treated her like family even before she married his brother. It was a rainy Tuesday afternoon, the kind of relentless Michigan rain that soaks you to the bone in seconds, when Amelia knocked on Marcus's door. She'd taken the bus across town, unable to drive because her hands were shaking too badly. When Marcus opened the door and saw her standing there, completely drenched, with red, swollen eyes and a face that showed nothing but pain, he immediately knew something was terribly wrong. "Amelia? Jesus, what happened? Get in here, you're soaked." She barely made it through the doorway before she collapsed into his arms, sobbing so hard she could barely breathe. "Brother Marcus," she gasped between sobs. Please, I need your help. I'm losing him. I'm losing my husband, and I don't know what to do anymore." Marcus led her inside gently, sat her down on his comfortable couch, made her a cup of hot tea, and just let her cry until she was ready to talk. When she finally composed herself enough to speak, everything poured out. The months of cruel insults about her weight and appearance. The obvious affair he wasn't even trying to hide anymore. The way he looked at her with pure disgust instead of the love they'd once shared. The fear that her children were watching their family disintegrate. By the time she finished, Marcus's jaw was clenched tight with barely controlled anger. "I'll talk to him," Marcus said firmly, his voice harder than Amelia had ever heard it. "This is completely unacceptable. You stood by my brother when he had absolutely nothing, when nobody else believed in him. He has no right to treat you this way." Amelia grabbed his hand desperately, her eyes pleading. "Please, Brother Marcus, don't make him angrier at me. I don't want things to get worse. I just want him to remember who we were. I just want my marriage back." Marcus shook his head sadly, his expression telling her what she didn't want to hear. "Amelia, sometimes people change in ways we don't recognize anymore. Sometimes success brings out the worst in people instead of the best. But I promise you, I'm going to remind him exactly who he used to be and what he owes you." The next morning, Marcus showed up unannounced at Charles's office downtown. He didn't call ahead, didn't make an appointment, just walked into the impressive glass building and told the receptionist he needed to see his brother immediately. Charles was in the middle of reviewing quarterly financial reports, sitting in his corner office with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, when his secretary buzzed his phone. "Mr. Benson, your brother Marcus is here to see you. He doesn't have an appointment, but he says it's urgent family business." Charles frowned, confused about what could possibly be urgent enough for Marcus to show up at his workplace. "Send him in." Marcus entered the office with a serious expression that Charles had seen before, usually when their mother had been alive, and Marcus had needed to have serious conversations about family responsibilities. He closed the door firmly behind him and stood there for a moment, just looking at his younger brother. "What's this about, Marcus?" "I'm pretty busy right now," Charles said, trying to sound casual but already feeling defensive. "You know exactly what this is about," Marcus said quietly, his voice dangerously calm. "Amelia came to see me yesterday. She was crying so hard she could barely speak." Charles's face immediately darkened with anger. So she ran to you complaining about me. She went behind my back to make me look bad to my own family? Don't even start with that, Marcus interrupted sharply, his voice rising. What's wrong with you, Charles? Have you completely lost your mind? Do you have any idea who you're treating like garbage? Marcus, you don't understand the situation. You don't know what it's like living with... I understand perfectly. Marcus cut him off again, slamming his hand on the expensive desk. Let me remind you of something you seem to have conveniently forgotten. Do you remember what you were before Amelia? You were broke. You were jobless. You were living in Cousin Raymond's basement because you couldn't even afford your own place. That woman you're mocking and abusing, she fed you when you couldn't feed yourself. She worked three jobs, so you could go to interviews and buy newspapers and keep trying. I've more than paid her back for that, Charles said defensively, standing up. Look at the house she lives in. Look at the car she drives. She doesn't want for anything material. Marcus moved closer, his eyes blazing. She wants respect. She wants the man who promised to love her in sickness and in health, for better or worse. Instead, you're out here mocking her body, cheating on her openly, and systematically breaking her heart and spirit. Do you have any shame left at all? You don't understand the pressure I'm under at this level, Charles tried to explain. The expectations, the image I have to maintain. I understand perfectly, Marcus said coldly, his voice dripping with contempt. You got successful and forgot where you came from. You started thinking you deserved better than the woman who literally built you up from nothing. You started measuring people by their appearance instead of their character. Well, let me tell you something that you need to hear, little brother. Amelia is better than you. She always has been, and she always will be. Charles clenched his fists, his face flushing red. Get out of my office. Gladly, Marcus said, walking toward the door. He paused with his hand on the handle and turned back. You're walking a dangerous path, Charles. Pride comes before a fall. And trust me on this. When you fall, and you absolutely will fall, don't expect Amelia to be there to catch you again. She's already caught you enough times. The door closed behind him with a final, definitive sound. Charles stood there alone in his impressive office, surrounded by symbols of his success, and felt nothing but rage burning through his body. How dare Amelia go crying to his family like some victim? How dare Marcus come into his workplace and lecture him like he was a child who didn't know better? The anger consumed him completely, and any chance of rational thought disappeared. That evening, Charles stormed into his house like a tornado, destroying everything in its path. "Amelia!" he shouted, before he was even fully through the door. She came out of the kitchen quickly, wiping her hands on a dish towel, her face showing immediate fear. "Yes, Charles? So you went running to my brother like a pathetic victim?" he screamed, his face twisted with rage. "You went crying to Marcus, trying to turn my own family against me? Trying to make me look like I'm the bad guy? Trying to embarrass me?" Amelia's eyes widened with fear. "Charles, please, I just needed someone to talk to. I didn't mean to embarrass you. I just needed help because I don't know what to do anymore. And you won't talk to me and..." Before she could finish the sentence, he slapped her hard across the face. The sound echoed through the house like a gunshot. Amelia stumbled backward, holding her cheek in complete shock, unable to believe what had just happened. In all their years together, through all their struggles and arguments, Charles had never once raised a hand to her. Precious and Junior came running from their bedroom, screaming in terror. "Daddy, no! Don't hurt Mommy! Please stop!" But Charles was beyond reason, beyond control, beyond anything resembling the man Amelia had married. He grabbed her arm roughly, his fingers digging in hard enough to leave bruises. "You want to embarrass me? You want to turn people against me? Get out. Get out of my house right now. I don't want to see your face ever again." "Charles, please," Amelia begged, tears streaming down her face as she tried to pull away. "Please don't do this in front of the children. Please, they're watching. They're going to remember this forever. Please." He dragged her toward the front door and threw her small purse outside onto the wet driveway. "Leave. Now. Get out of my house and don't come back." Precious clung desperately to her mother's leg, sobbing hysterically, her small body shaking. "Don't make Mommy leave. Please, Daddy. Please, we need Mommy. Don't make her go away." Junior wrapped his arms around Amelia's waist with all his strength, screaming through his tears. "No! You can't make Mommy leave. This is her house too. You're being mean. I hate you." Amelia knelt down with tears pouring down her face, her heart shattering into pieces as she hugged both her children as tight as she possibly could. "It's okay, my babies," she whispered, though it was very much not okay. "Mommy's okay. Don't cry. I promise, I swear to God, I will come back for you. I promise I'm not leaving you forever. I love you so much. Children, get inside the house right now," Charles ordered coldly, his voice hard as ice. They refused to let go, holding on to their mother like their lives depended on it, until Charles physically pulled them away from her. Both children were screaming, their faces red and wet with tears. "Mommy, Mommy, don't leave! Please don't leave us!" Amelia stood at the doorway watching her babies cry for her, watching them reach out their little hands toward her, and something inside her died in that moment. The part of her that had always believed things would get better, that love could conquer anything, that their family was unbreakable. It died right there on that doorstep. She picked up her purse with hands that wouldn't stop shaking and walked away barefoot, her vision completely blurred by tears, her heart physically aching in her chest. She walked for almost 2 miles in the dark, her feet bleeding from stepping on rocks and broken glass, her mind completely numb with shock and grief. She barely remembered the journey. She just kept walking, kept putting one foot in front of the other, until she found herself standing at the door of her friend Maya's apartment. Maya had been her friend since college, a single mother who ran a small bakery and struggled with her own challenges, but always had room in her life for people who needed help. When Maya answered the door in her pajamas and saw Amelia standing there, barefoot, soaking wet from the rain that had started again, with a bruise forming on her face and eyes that looked completely dead inside, she gasped in horror. "Amelia, oh my God, Jesus Christ, what happened to you?" Amelia collapsed in the doorway, unable to hold herself up anymore. "He threw me out, Maya," she said, her voice flat and emotionless from shock. "He hit me and he threw me out of the house like I'm nothing, like everything I did for him, everything I sacrificed, everything we built together, like it all meant nothing at all." Maya pulled her inside immediately, wrapped her in a warm blanket, and just let her cry. She didn't offer empty platitudes or say everything would be okay. She just held her friend and let her grieve. "You can stay here as long as you need," Maya finally said softly. "As long as you need, Amelia. That man has lost his damn mind, but you're safe here." But Amelia barely heard her. All she could think about, the only thing that filled her mind, was her children's faces. The way Precious had screamed for her. The way Junior had tried to hold on to her. The way Charles had ripped her away from them like she was a criminal. And the devastating, soul-crushing realization that the man she'd loved for 15 years, the man she'd built from nothing, had become someone she didn't recognize at all. Meanwhile, back at the house, Charles called Vanessa immediately. "Can I come over right now?" "Of course, baby," she purred on the other end of the line, satisfaction clear in her voice. "What happened?" "I kicked her out," Charles said, feeling a strange mixture of relief and something else he couldn't quite identify. "It's finally over. She's gone." Vanessa's smile was victorious. "So that means I can move in this weekend?" Charles hesitated for only a second, just one brief moment where his conscience tried to make itself heard. "Yeah, move in this weekend. Bring whatever you want." And just like that, with a phone call that lasted less than 2 minutes, Charles replaced 15 years of marriage like it meant nothing. He told himself he felt relieved, free, finally able to live the life he deserved. But that night, lying next to Vanessa in his bed, the bed he'd shared with Amelia for years, he couldn't sleep at all. He kept seeing Amelia's face, the shock and pain when he'd hit her, the way she'd looked at him with complete disbelief, like she couldn't comprehend that the man she loved could do something so cruel. The sound of his children screaming for their mother. And for just a brief moment, a tiny whisper of guilt tried to break through his wall of justification. But pride is a powerful drug. It silenced that whisper of conscience and convinced him he'd made the right choice. He had absolutely no idea that his choices were about to destroy him in ways he couldn't possibly imagine. Life with Vanessa should have been everything Charles dreamed of. At least, that's what he told himself every morning when he woke up. She was beautiful, sophisticated, successful in her own right, and made him feel like he was living the life he deserved. But within just 2 weeks of her moving into his house, cracks began showing in the perfect image he'd imagined. "Charles, I need $1,500 for a spa day at that new place downtown," Vanessa announced casually one Saturday morning while scrolling through her phone. Charles looked up from his coffee, confused. "Didn't you just go to a spa last weekend? I gave you money for that." She rolled her eyes dramatically without even looking at him. "That was last week. This is a different spa, and I need to maintain myself. Unless you want me to start looking like your ex-wife?" The comment stung more than Charles wanted to admit. But he pulled out his wallet anyway. Money had never been the real problem between them. The problem ran much deeper. Vanessa always needed something. New designer shoes to match outfits nobody else would ever see her in. New handbags that cost thousands of dollars. Weekly salon appointments for her hair. Bi-weekly nail appointments. Shopping trips that resulted in bags and bags of clothes she'd wear once and forget about. The spending was relentless, endless, and completely unconcerned with budget or savings. Unlike Amelia, who had treated every dollar like it mattered because she remembered what poverty felt like, Vanessa treated Charles's money like an infinite resource that existed solely for her pleasure. She never asked what they could afford. She just demanded and expected him to provide without question. But the money issues paled in comparison to the real problem: the children. Precious and Junior had hated Vanessa from the very first moment she walked into their home carrying designer luggage and fake smiles. When she tried to cook breakfast that first morning, attempting to play house and pretend like she belonged there, both children refused to eat a single bite. They sat at the table with their arms crossed, staring at their plates in silent protest. "You need to eat something before school," Vanessa said with forced cheerfulness, her smile not reaching her eyes. "We're not hungry," Precious said coldly, her voice flat and emotionless. When Vanessa tried to talk to them, asking about school or friends or anything to establish some kind of connection, they would either ignore her completely or answer in single syllables that made it clear they wanted nothing to do with her. At night, they cried themselves to sleep asking for their mother, their sobs muffled by pillows but still audible throughout the house. "Charles, you seriously need to do something about those kids," Vanessa complained almost daily. "They're incredibly disrespectful. They completely ignore me. They won't eat what I cook. They act like I'm invisible. I didn't sign up to be treated like this in my own home." "They miss their mother," Charles said weakly, feeling the weight of what he'd done pressing down on him. "They're just adjusting. Give them time." "Well, I'm here now, and they need to get over it," Vanessa snapped. "I'm not going to be disrespected by children in my own house." But the children didn't get over it. Precious, normally a quiet and obedient girl who never caused trouble, became openly defiant in ways that shocked Charles. When Vanessa told her to clean her room one afternoon, Precious looked her straight in the eyes and said with cold clarity, "You're not my mother. You don't get to tell me what to do. You're just the woman who destroyed our family." Vanessa's face turned red with rage. "Charles, did you hear what your daughter just said to me?" Charles tried to discipline Precious, tried to tell her to show respect, but his heart wasn't in it at all. He couldn't make the words sound convincing because deep down, in a place he didn't want to acknowledge, he knew Precious was absolutely right. Vanessa wasn't their mother. She was the woman who had helped destroy their family. Junior, meanwhile, refused to speak to Vanessa at all. Complete silence. When she entered a room, he would leave. When she asked him questions, he would stare through her like she didn't exist. His form of protest was somehow even more devastating than Precious's open defiance. Meanwhile, Amelia was fighting to survive day by day at Maya's small apartment. Maya had opened her home and heart without hesitation. But Amelia felt the weight of being a burden, of taking up space in someone else's life. She couldn't eat. She couldn't sleep more than a few hours without waking up from nightmares. She'd lost 15 pounds in 2 weeks. Not from trying, but from grief literally consuming her from the inside out. "You can't keep going like this," Maya said gently one evening, watching Amelia stare blankly at the wall. "You're wasting away. You need to eat something. Anything." Amelia shook her head slowly. "I'm not hungry. I can't think about food when I don't know if my babies are eating, if they're okay, if they're crying for me at night." Maya squeezed her hand with fierce determination. "Then we need to do something about it. You can't just sit here dying slowly. Those kids need their mother." Those words planted a seed that started growing. Over the next few days, Amelia began to realize something crucial. She couldn't just sit around waiting for Charles to change his mind or let her back into her children's lives. She needed to take action. She needed to rebuild herself so she could fight for her kids. Maya helped her enroll in food handler certification classes at the community center. "You've always been an amazing cook," Maya encouraged. "Remember that catering business dream you used to talk about back in college? It's not too late, girl." Amelia looked at her with eyes that had lost all their light. "Maya, I'm 35 years old with no job, no home, no money. How am I supposed to start a business?" The same way you do everything else, Maya said firmly. One step at a time. You start small. My bakery needs help on weekends. It's not much money, but it's a start. And once you get certified, you can start taking small catering gigs. Build from there. For the first time since Charles threw her out, Amelia felt a tiny flicker of something that might have been hope. She threw herself into the work with desperate determination. She woke up at dawn to help Maya bake bread and pastries before the shop opened. She studied for her certification exam late into the night, memorizing food safety regulations and kitchen management principles. And slowly, painfully, she started feeling like herself again. Not Charles's wife, not just someone's mother. Amelia Richardson, a person with value and capability and dreams of her own. One afternoon, about 3 weeks after she'd been thrown out, Amelia got a call from an unknown number. Her heart jumped, hoping desperately it might be her children. Hello? Amelia, it's Marcus, Charles's brother. Can we meet somewhere? I need to talk to you. They met at a small coffee shop in a neighborhood halfway between them. Marcus looked troubled, his usual confident demeanor replaced with visible stress. Amelia, I want you to know something. I've been thinking about everything nonstop since you came to me. I know my brother hurt you in ways that are unforgivable, but you have legal rights. The house, the savings, the cars, everything you helped build during the marriage. You're entitled to half of it in a divorce. Amelia shook her head immediately. I don't want his money, Brother Marcus. I never wanted his money. I just want my children. That's all I care about. Marcus leaned forward intensely. Then fight for them. File for custody. Get a lawyer. Don't let him keep them from you like you did something wrong. You're their mother, and those kids need you desperately. I see them, Amelia. I visit that house and they're miserable. Precious barely talks. Junior cries constantly. They're completely lost without you. I can't afford a lawyer, Amelia said, her voice breaking. I'm staying with Maya, working at her bakery for minimum wage. I have maybe $200 to my name. Marcus reached into his jacket and pulled out an envelope, placing it on the table between them. I talked to a friend of mine, David Chen. He's a family lawyer, one of the best in the city. He's willing to help you at a significantly reduced rate because I explained your situation. This envelope has $1,500. Use it to get started with him. Get your children back. Amelia stared at the envelope with tears streaming down her face. Why are you helping me like this? Charles is your brother. Because you're family too, Marcus said simply, his voice full of conviction. And because my brother is wrong. I can't fix him or change his mind, but I can help you. Those children deserve their mother. That meeting changed everything for Amelia. For the first time since Charles threw her out, since her entire world collapsed, she felt something she hadn't felt in weeks. Power. Maybe she wasn't completely powerless. Maybe she could fight back. Maybe she could protect her children, even if she couldn't save her marriage. If your husband threw you out and kept your kids after you sacrificed everything for him, would you fight back or walk away? Drop your answer in the comments. Meanwhile, Charles's world was starting to crumble in ways he didn't recognize at first. At work, his performance was slipping noticeably. He missed important deadlines because he was distracted. He snapped at colleagues during meetings for minor things. His normally sharp, analytical mind seemed foggy and unfocused. His boss, Mr. Henderson, called him into the office one afternoon. "Charles, I need to talk to you about your performance." "What's going on?" Your work used to be consistently excellent, and lately it's been inconsistent at best. Charles rubbed his temples, feeling a headache forming. I'm sorry, sir. Personal issues at home. I'm working through some things. Mr. Henderson's expression showed concern, but also firmness. I understand that life happens, but I need you focused. You're in a senior position. People depend on you. Get whatever's going on sorted out, because I can't have a manager who's not fully committed to excellence. That conversation should have been a wake-up call, but Charles was too consumed with his personal chaos to hear it. That night, he came home exhausted both physically and emotionally. Vanessa was sprawled on the couch in expensive loungewear, scrolling through her phone and barely acknowledging his presence. I'm hungry. Order us something from that new Italian place downtown, she said without looking up. Can't you cook something? Charles asked, his patience wearing thin. We have food in the kitchen. She laughed like he'd told a hilarious joke. Baby, I don't cook. That's not my thing. I thought you knew that. Cooking is for housewives, and I'm not a housewife. I'm a career woman. Charles thought about all the times Amelia had dinner waiting for him, no matter how tired she was from working multiple jobs. No matter how exhausted she felt, she always made sure he had a home-cooked meal. He pushed the thought away violently, but it kept creeping back. At night, lying next to Vanessa in the bed he used to share with Amelia, Charles found himself thinking about his ex-wife more and more frequently. He remembered her laugh, genuine and warm and infectious. He remembered how she used to look at him like he was the most important person in the world. He remembered her unwavering support during the hardest years of his life. He remembered her gentleness with their children, and for brief moments, usually late at night when Vanessa was asleep beside him, he wondered if he'd made a catastrophic mistake. You're quiet tonight, Vanessa noted one evening, her voice showing more annoyance than concern. Just tired, Charles lied, but the truth was more complicated than fatigue. What he didn't say, what he couldn't admit even to himself yet, was that he was starting to realize something terrifying. He'd traded gold for fool's gold. He'd thrown away something precious for something that glittered but had no real value, but his pride wouldn't let him acknowledge that realization consciously. Not yet. The revelation that would shatter his world completely came on a Thursday evening 2 months after Amelia had been thrown out. Charles decided to come home early from work, hoping to surprise Vanessa and maybe reconnect with her since they'd been distant lately. He wanted to try to recapture whatever it was he thought they had. But when he walked through his front door, he heard something that made his blood run cold. Laughter. Male laughter. Coming from his living room. He walked slowly toward the sound, his heart pounding, and what he saw made his entire world tilt on its axis. Vanessa was sitting on his couch, wearing a short silk nightgown that left almost nothing to imagination, laughing and drinking wine with another man. A man Charles didn't know. The man had his hand on her bare knee, and they were sitting close, too close, their body language screaming intimacy and familiarity. Vanessa? Charles's voice came out as a deadly whisper. She jumped slightly, surprise flashing across her face before being replaced by defiance. Charles, you're home early. Who the hell is this? Charles demanded, his voice rising as fury flooded through him. The man stood up nervously, clearly uncomfortable. Hey man, look, I didn't know. Get out of my house, Charles growled, his hands clenching into fists. Get out right now before I throw you out. The man grabbed his jacket and practically ran for the door. leaving Charles and Vanessa alone in charged silence. Charles turned to her with betrayal and rage burning in his eyes. What the hell was that? Who is he? She crossed her arms defensively, no trace of apology in her expression. He's just a friend, Charles. Calm down. You're overreacting. A friend? Charles's voice was shaking with fury. A friend drinking wine with you in my house while you're basically naked? Don't insult my intelligence. Vanessa's eyes flashed with her own anger. Your house? Let me tell you something, Charles Benson. You don't own me. I'm not your property. If you have a problem with me having friends over, maybe I should just leave. Charles couldn't believe what he was hearing. I gave you everything. I left my wife for you. I gave you a home, money, everything you wanted. Vanessa laughed, a cold sound that held no warmth. You mean you left your fat wife who you were embarrassed to be seen with? Don't act like you did me some huge favor. You wanted me because I made you look good, because I fit into your successful image. Well, guess what? You're not as special as you think you are. The truth of her words hit Charles like a physical blow to the chest. She continued, her voice dripping with contempt. And honestly, Charles, you're still miserable. You thought changing women would change who you are, but it didn't. You're just an insecure man who thought trading up would make him happy. Charles stood there speechless, feeling like the floor was disappearing beneath his feet. Everything he'd believed, everything he'd convinced himself was true, was crumbling. Get out, he whispered. What? Get out of my house, he screamed, finding his voice. Pack your things and get out right now. Vanessa smirked without any sign of being upset. Fine. I was getting bored of playing house anyway. You're not as fun as you used to be. She went to the bedroom, threw her clothes into the expensive luggage he'd bought her, and walked out 15 minutes later without a backward glance. And suddenly, Charles was alone. Completely, utterly, devastatingly alone. The house felt massive and empty. The silence was deafening. That night, Charles Benson sat in his expensive living room, surrounded by all his material success, and cried for the first time in years. He cried for what he'd lost. He cried for what he'd destroyed with his own hands. And he cried because he finally understood, with brutal clarity, that he'd thrown away the one woman who had truly loved him for a woman who never cared about him at all. But the question was it too late to fix what he'd broken? Charles spent the following 2 weeks in a fog of regret and self-loathing. Vanessa was gone, truly gone, and good riddance. But her absence didn't bring the relief he'd expected. Instead, it created a vacuum that was filled entirely by thoughts of Amelia. Memories of her he'd tried so hard to suppress came flooding back with overwhelming force. He'd remember coming home exhausted from job interviews to find her waiting with encouragement and belief in him. He'd remember her working herself to exhaustion at multiple jobs just so he could keep trying. He'd remember her defending him to neighbors who gossiped. He'd remember the way she used to smile at him like he was her entire world, and the crushing guilt of how he'd repaid that love made it hard to breathe. At work, things continued deteriorating. He missed another important deadline, which resulted in the company losing a significant client. He showed up late to meetings. His analytical work, once sharp and insightful, became sloppy with errors. Mr. Henderson called him in again, and this time the conversation was much more serious. Charles, I'm going to be direct with you. Your performance over the past few months has been completely unacceptable. You've missed deadlines, lost us clients, And frankly, you seem like you don't want to be here anymore." Charles tried to defend himself, but what could he say that would matter? "Sir, I'm going through a difficult personal situation. I just need some time to—" Mr. Henderson held up his hand. "I've given you time. I've been patient. But this is a business, Charles, and I need people who are fully committed. I'm sorry, but we're going to have to let you go. Effective immediately." The words hit Charles like a sledgehammer. After 11 years at Henderson Financial, after climbing from entry level to senior management, after making this company millions of dollars, he was being fired. "Sir, please, if you could just give me another chance." "The decision is final," Mr. Henderson said, not unkindly but firmly. "Security will escort you to your office to collect your personal items." 20 minutes later, Charles walked out of the building carrying a small cardboard box containing the remnants of his career. He sat in his car in the parking lot for over an hour, staring at nothing. The job that had given him status, that had made him feel important and successful, that he'd sacrificed his marriage to maintain, was gone. Just gone. At first, Charles didn't tell anyone about being fired. Not his brother Marcus, not his children, not anyone. He just pretended to go to work every day, sitting in coffee shops or driving aimlessly around the city, then coming home at his usual time like nothing had changed. He told himself he'd find another job quickly, that someone with his experience and credentials would be hired immediately. But the job market wasn't kind to executives with recent terminations on their record. Every application went nowhere. Every interview ended with polite rejections. For 3 weeks, Charles lived in this strange limbo of pretending everything was fine while his world collapsed around him. Then, on a random Tuesday morning, there was a knock at his door. Marcus stood there with a stern expression and concerned eyes. "We need to talk, little brother." Charles tried to act casual. "About what?" Marcus pushed past him into the house. "About the fact that you got fired 3 weeks ago and didn't tell anyone. Mr. Henderson called me Charles. He wanted to make sure you were okay." "Are you?" Charles's facade crumbled. "I'm fine. Everything's fine." "Don't lie to me," Marcus said firmly. "Look at this place. Look at you. When's the last time you showered? When's the last time you actually ate a real meal?" Charles looked around his house for the first time in days and realized Marcus was right. Dirty dishes were piled in the sink. Laundry was scattered everywhere. The place that used to be immaculate looked like a disaster zone, and he looked even worse. "I lost my job," Charles admitted, his voice hollow. "I lost Vanessa. My kids barely talk to me. I lost everything, Marcus." Marcus sat down heavily. "You lost it because you threw it away, Charles. You had a good woman who loved you, and you destroyed her. You had a family, and you broke it. You had a career, and you couldn't focus because you were too busy making terrible decisions. These aren't things that happen to you. These are consequences of your choices." Charles covered his face with his hands. "I know. God, I know. I've been sitting here for weeks thinking about nothing else. I was so stupid. So incredibly stupid." "So what are you going to do about it?" Marcus asked. "What can I do? Amelia hates me. She should hate me. I don't deserve her forgiveness." Marcus was quiet for a long moment. "Amelia doesn't hate you, Charles. That woman is incapable of hate. She's hurt. She's devastated. But she doesn't hate you. The question is, are you man enough to face what you did and try to make it right?" Those words stayed with Charles after Marcus left. For days, he wrestled with his pride. his shame, his fear. Could he really face Amelia after everything he'd done? Could he look her in the eyes and take full responsibility without making excuses? Finally, he called Marcus. "Can you help me find her? I need to see Amelia. I need to apologize. Even if she never forgives me, I have to try." Marcus hesitated. "She's been staying with her friend Maya. But Charles, you can't just show up expecting things to be fixed with one conversation. You destroyed that woman. Be prepared for her to tell you to go to hell." "I know," Charles said quietly. "I deserve that and worse." Marcus made a call to Amelia, explaining that Charles wanted to see her to apologize. There was a long silence on her end. "Why now?" she finally asked. "Because he lost everything," Marcus said honestly. "His job, his girlfriend, his illusions. And I think he's finally seeing clearly what he threw away." Another pause. "I'll meet him, but not at Maya's place. Tell him to meet me at that coffee shop on 4th Street, tomorrow at 2. And Marcus, if this is just him feeling sorry for himself, I'm walking out." The next day, Charles arrived at the coffee shop 30 minutes early. He was so nervous his hands wouldn't stop shaking. At exactly 2 o'clock, he saw Amelia walk in, and his breath caught. She looked different. She'd lost weight, yes, but that wasn't it. She carried herself differently, more confident, stronger, like she'd found a part of herself she'd lost. She sat down across from him without smiling or showing any emotion. "Marcus said you wanted to talk, so talk." "Amelia?" Charles's voice cracked immediately. "Thank you for coming. I didn't think you would, and I wouldn't have blamed you if you didn't." "I almost didn't," she said honestly. "But I decided I owed it to myself to hear what you have to say. So say it." Charles took a deep breath, knowing that this might be his only chance. "I'm sorry. Those words are completely inadequate for what I did to you, but I have to start somewhere. I'm sorry for every cruel word. I'm sorry for cheating on you. I'm sorry for hitting you. I'm sorry for throwing you out. I'm sorry for taking you for granted and treating you like you were worthless, when the truth is, you were always too good for me." Amelia's eyes glistened, but she didn't let tears fall. "Why, Charles? That's what I need to understand. Why did you do it? I gave you everything. I stood by you when nobody else did. I believed in you when you didn't believe in yourself. Why wasn't that enough?" Charles felt tears rolling down his face. "Because I'm an idiot who let success corrupt him. Because I got caught up in appearances and status and forgot what actually mattered. Because I was insecure about where I came from. And instead of dealing with that, I blamed you. You were never the problem, Amelia. I was ashamed of my past, and you represented that past. So I convinced myself you were the problem." "Do you know what the worst part was?" Amelia asked, her voice breaking. "Not the cheating, not even getting thrown out. It was the way you looked at me with disgust, like I was nothing, like all those years we struggled together meant nothing, like my love was worthless." "It was never worthless," Charles said desperately. "Your love was the most valuable thing I've ever had, and I threw it away like an absolute fool. Vanessa left me the minute I had problems. She was only there for the money and status. But you loved me when I had nothing. You're the only woman who ever truly loved me for who I was." Amelia was quiet for a long time. "I've spent these past weeks rebuilding myself, Charles. I got my food handler certification. I'm working at Maya's bakery, and I've started taking small catering gigs. I'm starting to dream again about that business I always wanted. And you know what I realized? I don't need you to be happy. I don't need anyone to complete me. I'm proud of you, Charles said sincerely. Truly, you're doing what you were always meant to do. She studied his face carefully. I appreciate the apology. I really do. But I need time, Charles. I need time to figure out what comes next. I can't just forgive you because you finally realized what you lost. I understand, Charles said. And Amelia, there's something else. I lost my job. I'm broke, or I will be soon once I finish paying off debts. I'm living in a house I can't afford anymore. I'm in therapy trying to understand how I became the person I became. I'm telling you this because I want you to know I'm not the same man who threw you out, or I'm trying not to be. Amelia was quiet again. I'll think about everything you said. For now, I need to focus on getting my children back. That's my priority. Can I see them? Charles asked hopefully. I know they're angry with me. They should be. But I want to try to fix my relationship with them too. I'll talk to them, Amelia said, standing up. But Charles, you need to understand something. Even if I forgive you, and I'm not saying I will, things can never go back to how they were. Too much has happened. I know, Charles whispered. As she walked out, Charles sat there alone with his coffee and his regrets. But for the first time in months, he felt something that might have been hope. Maybe, just maybe, he could start making things right. What Charles didn't know was that the real twist, the thing that would test both of them beyond anything they'd experienced, was about to happen. Because 2 weeks later, Charles would face a crisis that would bring everything into devastating focus. And Amelia would have to make a choice that would define the rest of her life. Charles tried to rebuild his life one painful step at a time. He sold the big house and moved into a modest 2-bedroom apartment on the other side of town. It was a huge downgrade from what he'd grown accustomed to, but it was what he could afford on his dwindling savings. He sent out hundreds of job applications, willing to take positions far below his previous level. Most went unanswered. The few interviews he got all ended the same way. We'll be in touch. But Charles didn't give up this time. He worked odd consulting gigs for small businesses, nothing glamorous but honest work that paid some bills. He attended therapy twice a week, finally confronting the insecurity and shame that had driven his terrible decisions. His therapist, Dr. Williams, pushed him hard. You need to understand something, Charles. Your behavior toward Amelia wasn't about her weight or appearance. It was about you trying to distance yourself from your past. She represented where you came from, and you wanted to pretend that person never existed. Charles knew she was right. It was a bitter pill to swallow, but necessary. Meanwhile, Amelia was thriving in ways that surprised even her. Her catering business, which she'd named Second Chances Catering on Maya's suggestion, was growing steadily through word of mouth. She'd started with small birthday parties and family gatherings, but her food was so good and her prices so reasonable that clients kept recommending her to friends. Within 3 months, she was booking events every weekend. She hired Maya's daughter as an assistant. She was making more money than she ever had working multiple jobs. And more importantly, she was proud of herself. She'd built something from nothing, just like she'd always dreamed. But the hole in her heart remained. Her children. She missed Precious and Junior with an ache that never went away. True to her word, she'd arranged supervised visits with them through Marcus, who had stepped in as an intermediary. The first visit had been devastating. The kids had run to her, crying and holding on like they'd never let go. "Mommy, please come home," Precious had begged. "Please, we miss you so much." Junior had just sobbed into her shoulder, unable to form words. "I'm working on it, babies," Amelia had promised. "I'm working on it every single day." As weeks passed and Amelia showed up consistently, never missing a scheduled visit no matter what, the children's spirits improved slightly. They started smiling again. They talked about school and friends, but they always ended every visit the same way. "When are you coming home?" Charles had started attending the visits too, with Amelia's permission. At first it was awkward and tense, but gradually they fell into a cautious peace. They weren't friends, but they weren't enemies. They were two people who'd shared a life and were trying to figure out how to coexist for their children's sake. One Saturday afternoon during a visit at the park, Precious looked at both her parents and asked innocently, "Are you and Daddy going to be together again?" Amelia and Charles exchanged glances. "We don't know, sweetheart," Amelia said honestly. "We're taking things one day at a time." "I miss when we were a family," Junior said quietly. Charles felt his heart break all over again. What had he done to these beautiful children? That evening, after the kids had gone home with Charles, Amelia sat with Maya on her small balcony. "I don't know what to do," she admitted. "Part of me will always love Charles, but I can't forget what he did." "How do you trust someone again after they've destroyed you?" Maya sipped her tea thoughtfully. "I think forgiveness and trust are two different things. You can forgive someone without trusting them again. The question is, do you think he's genuinely changed?" "I think he's trying," Amelia said carefully. "But is trying enough?" Before Maya could answer, Amelia's phone rang. It was Marcus, and he sounded frantic. "Amelia, you need to get to City General Hospital right now." Her heart stopped. "What happened? Are the kids okay?" "The kids are fine. It's Charles. He was in a bad car accident." "It's serious, Amelia. Really serious." Amelia's hands started shaking. Despite everything, despite all the pain he'd caused, the thought of Charles dying made her feel like she couldn't breathe. "I'm on my way." When she arrived at the hospital, Marcus was in the waiting room, his face drawn with worry. "What happened?" Amelia asked. "He was driving home from a job interview when a truck ran a red light and hit him head-on. His car flipped 3 times. Amelia, they said it's a miracle he survived at all." They sat in that waiting room for 3 hours before a doctor finally emerged. "Are you family?" "I'm his brother," Marcus said. "This is his wife." He glanced at Amelia, who nodded. "He's stable," the doctor said, and both of them exhaled in relief. "But there's significant damage. Both of his legs were crushed in the impact. We did everything we could, but the reality is he's going to need extensive surgery and months of physical therapy. He won't be able to walk for a long time. He'll need a wheelchair initially, then crutches, then a walker. It's going to be a long road to recovery." Amelia felt tears streaming down her face. "Can we see him?" "He's sedated right now, but you can go in." Charles looked so small and broken in that hospital bed, hooked up to machines, his legs elevated and wrapped in bandages. Amelia stood at his bedside and took his hand gently. "Why am I here?" she whispered to herself. "After everything, why do I still care?" Marcus put a hand on her shoulder. "Because that's who you are, Amelia. You care even when people don't deserve it." When Charles finally woke up the next morning, the first thing he saw was Amelia sitting in the chair beside his bed. "Am I dreaming?" he croaked. "No," she said softly. You're awake. You were in an accident." Charles tried to move and winced in pain. "My legs. I can't feel my legs." "They're injured," Amelia explained gently. "The doctor said you'll walk again, but it's going to take time. Lots of time and therapy." Charles closed his eyes and tears leaked out. "This is karma, isn't it? I took away your dignity, and now God is taking away my ability to walk." "Don't say that," Amelia said quietly. "This was an accident, not punishment." Over the following weeks, Charles remained in the hospital, and Amelia came every day. She brought him food from her catering business because he couldn't stomach the hospital meals. She read to him when he was bored. She encouraged him through the painful physical therapy sessions. "Why are you doing this?" Charles asked one afternoon. "After everything I did to you, why are you here?" Amelia was quiet for a moment. "Because I'm not you, Charles. I don't abandon people when they're broken. And because whether we're together or not, you're the father of my children. They need you to recover." But it was more than that, and they both knew it. She still loved him, even though she didn't want to, even though it would be easier not to. The kids visited often, and seeing their father so helpless broke something in them. "Daddy, are you going to be okay?" Precious asked, her voice small and scared. "I'll be fine, Princess," Charles assured her. "Your mommy is taking good care of me." Junior looked at both his parents with wise eyes beyond his years. "Mommy still loves you, I can tell." Amelia didn't deny it. What was the point? After 2 months, Charles was finally discharged from the hospital. He was in a wheelchair, facing months of grueling physical therapy before he could even attempt walking with assistance. Marcus had offered to let Charles stay with him, but before Charles could answer, Amelia spoke up. "He can stay at my place. I have a spare room." Everyone looked at her in surprise. "Amelia, are you sure?" Marcus asked. "You don't owe him this." "I know I don't," she said firmly, "but he needs help, and I'm capable of providing it." So Charles moved into Amelia's modest apartment. It was humbling, going from a house he'd owned to a small apartment, being completely dependent on the woman he'd abused. But Amelia never made him feel small. She helped him with dignity and kindness he absolutely didn't deserve. She would wake up early to help him shower and get dressed before she went to work. She made sure he had everything he needed within reach. She drove him to physical therapy appointments 3 times a week. And slowly, painfully, Charles began to improve. The physical therapy was brutal. Learning to put weight on his legs again felt impossible. There were days he wanted to give up, to accept that he'd be in a wheelchair forever. But Amelia wouldn't let him quit. "Come on, Charles," she encouraged during one particularly difficult session. "Just one more step. I know you can do it." "I can't," he gasped, pain shooting through his legs. "Yes, you can," she insisted. "You're stronger than you think. Don't give up." And somehow, with her voice in his ear, he managed one more step, then another, then another. Living together again brought a strange intimacy. They talked late into the night like they used to when they were young and broke. Charles told her about his therapy sessions, the insights he was gaining about himself. Amelia told him about her growing business and her dreams of expanding. One night, as Amelia was helping him into bed, Charles caught her hand. "I don't understand you," he said quietly. "I destroyed you, and you're putting me back together. Why?" Amelia sat on the edge of his bed. "Because I finally realized something, Charles. Holding on to anger and bitterness was hurting me more than it was hurting you. Forgiveness isn't about saying what you did was okay. It's about freeing myself from the weight of hate. Do you think, Charles hesitated, do you think we could ever be a family again? Not now. I know I haven't earned that. But someday? Amelia was quiet for a long time. I don't know. I honestly don't know. The man I fell in love with is in there somewhere. I see glimpses of him. But I also can't forget the man who hit me, who threw me out, who made me feel worthless. Those scars don't disappear just because you're sorry. I know, Charles said, and I don't expect them to. I just want you to know that every day I wake up grateful that you didn't give up on me the way I gave up on you. The children were thrilled to have both parents under one roof again, even if the arrangement was complicated. They didn't care about the details. They just knew their family felt more complete. 6 months after the accident, Charles took his first steps without any assistance. It was only 3 steps before he had to grab onto Amelia for support, but it was progress. Real progress. I did it, he whispered, tears in his eyes. You did it, Amelia confirmed, tears in her own eyes. They stood there, his arms around her for support, and something shifted between them. It wasn't romance, not yet. But it was the foundation that romance could potentially build on. Trust, respect, and genuine care. A year after Charles moved in, Amelia's business had grown so much that she needed to hire a business manager. Charles, who had always been brilliant with finance and strategy, offered his help. I know I'm not the businessman I used to be, but I still have skills. Let me help you grow this. Working together reignited something between them. They were a good team. They always had been. Charles's analytical mind combined with Amelia's creativity and warmth made the business flourish beyond either of their expectations. And slowly, carefully, like 2 people learning to trust after betrayal, they fell in love again. Not the innocent love of their youth, but something deeper. A love that had been tested by fire and somehow survived. One evening, 2 years after the accident, Charles got down on one knee with difficulty, still using a cane for balance. Amelia Richardson Benson, I know I don't deserve you. I know I already had my chance and I destroyed it. But I'm not the same man anymore. These past 2 years, you've shown me what real love looks like. Would you give me the honor, the privilege of being your husband again? Really your husband this time, not the prideful fool I was before. Amelia looked at him with tears streaming down her face. Yes, I'll marry you again. But Charles, if you ever, and I mean ever, treat me the way you did before, I won't, he interrupted. I swear on everything I love, including our children, I will spend the rest of my life proving to you that I've changed. They renewed their vows in Maya's bakery, surrounded by close friends and family. It wasn't fancy. There was no expensive venue or designer dress. Just love, genuine and hard-earned and real. Marcus stood up to give a toast. I watched my brother become someone I didn't recognize, and I watched this remarkable woman help him find his way back to humanity. Charles, you're the luckiest man alive. Don't you ever forget it. I won't, Charles promised, looking at Amelia like she was the most precious thing in the world. Because she was. So what's the lesson here? What should you take away from Charles and Amelia's story? The truth is both simple and profound. Pride destroys everything it touches. Humility heals even the deepest wounds. And the people who stand by you when you have absolutely nothing are the ones who deserve your unwavering loyalty when you have everything. Charles learned the hardest way possible that success is meaningless without people who genuinely love you to share it with. He learned that a woman's worth isn't measured by dress size, Instagram followers, or how she photographs. It's measured by the size of her heart, her loyalty, her sacrifice, and her capacity to love unconditionally. He learned that true beauty isn't something you see in a mirror. It's something you feel in the quiet moments when someone holds your hand through the darkest times. Amelia learned that she was infinitely stronger than she ever imagined. She learned that her value didn't come from her husband's opinion or society's impossible standards. She learned that forgiveness isn't weakness. It's actually the ultimate form of strength. And she learned that sometimes you have to lose yourself completely to find out who you really are beneath everyone else's expectations and judgments. Their story isn't a fairy tale with a perfect ending. Even after getting back together, after renewing their vows, they still had difficult days. Days when old wounds resurfaced unexpectedly. Days when trust felt fragile as glass. Days when Amelia remembered the pain and Charles remembered his shame. But the difference was, they kept showing up. They kept choosing each other, not out of obligation or desperation, but out of genuine commitment to building something better on the ruins of what they'd destroyed. Today, 5 years after Charles's accident, they run Second Chances Catering together. The business has grown from Amelia's small weekend gigs into a full-service catering company with 10 employees and a contract to provide food services for a major corporate office building. Charles handles all the business operations, finances, marketing, and client relations. Amelia focuses on menu creation, food quality, and maintaining the warm, personal touch that made clients fall in love with their services in the first place. They're not wealthy by society's standards, at least not the way Charles was at his peak corporate career. But they're comfortable. More importantly, they're happy. Genuinely, deeply happy in a way that doesn't depend on impressing others or maintaining appearances. They've learned that happiness doesn't come from bank account balances or social status symbols. It comes from meaningful relationships, mutual respect, and shared purpose. The business name, Second Chances Catering, carries deep meaning for both of them. It represents Amelia's second chance at her dream of owning a business. It represents Charles's second chance at life after nearly dying in that accident. And most importantly, it represents their second chance at love after he'd destroyed their first chance so completely. Precious is now a college sophomore studying psychology with a focus on family counseling. She wants to help other families navigate the kind of crisis hers experienced. She's often told her parents that watching them fall apart and then rebuild taught her more about resilience than any textbook ever could. "You guys showed me that people can change if they really want to," she said. "But you also showed me that some actions have consequences that last forever. Dad, I love you, but I'll never forget what happened. And that keeps me from accepting anyone treating me badly in my own relationships." Junior is a high school senior now, a talented artist whose work has won several competitions. He credits his emotional depth in his art to the trauma and healing he witnessed in his family. "I paint about pain and hope," he explains to people who ask about his dark but ultimately uplifting pieces. "Because I've seen both up close. I've seen what it looks like when someone you love becomes cruel. And I've seen what it takes to become good again." Both kids know their family's full story. Amelia and Charles made the difficult decision to be honest with them as they got older, age-appropriate conversations that evolved over time. They didn't hide the affair, the abuse, the separation, or the long road to reconciliation. "We wanted them to learn from our mistakes," Amelia explained to Maya one day. not just hear some sanitized version that makes their father look better than he was. Charles often speaks at men's groups and corporate leadership seminars about the dangers of letting success corrupt your values and relationships. His talks are raw, honest, and don't paint him in a flattering light. "I was a man who had everything," he tells audiences. "A loving wife who'd sacrificed everything for me, beautiful children, a high-paying job with status and respect. And I threw it all away because I let pride convince me I deserved better than the woman who built me up from nothing." He always pauses there, letting that sink in. "I mocked my wife for being overweight. I cheated on her with a woman who didn't love me but loved what I could provide. I hit her. I threw her out of her own home and kept her from her children. I became a monster, all because I cared more about appearances than character. And God humbled me in the most devastating way possible. I lost my job. I lost my girlfriend. And I nearly lost my life in an accident that left me completely dependent on the woman I'd abused." His voice always breaks here. "That woman could have left me in that hospital. She could have said, 'You made your bed, now lie in it.' And she would have been completely justified. But instead, she took care of me. She helped me learn to walk again. She forgave me when I didn't deserve forgiveness. And slowly, patiently, she helped me become a man worth loving again." The audiences are always silent, moved by his brutal honesty. "If there's one thing I want you to take from my story," Charles concludes, "it's this. Don't wait until you lose everything to appreciate what you have. Don't sacrifice your family on the altar of success and status. And never, ever mock or belittle your partner because they don't fit some shallow standard of beauty. Real beauty is loving someone when they have nothing to offer but their heart." Amelia also speaks publicly, though her message is different. She talks at women's conferences and domestic violence awareness events about self-worth, resilience, and the difference between forgiveness and enabling. "I want to be very clear about something," she always states firmly. "Forgiveness doesn't mean staying in an abusive situation. Forgiveness doesn't mean accepting mistreatment. I only reconciled with Charles after he'd done years of serious work on himself, after he'd proven through consistent actions that he'd genuinely changed." She continues, "For years before everything fell apart, I let my husband's opinion define my self-worth. I thought if he found me unattractive, I must be unattractive. If he was embarrassed by me, I must be embarrassing. But the truth is, your worth is inherent. It doesn't increase when someone loves you, and it doesn't decrease when someone rejects you. You are valuable simply because you exist." Women often approach her after these talks, crying, sharing their own stories of being mocked or abused or made to feel worthless by partners. Amelia hugs each one and tells them, "You deserve so much better, and whether that means leaving or setting hard boundaries or demanding change, you deserve to be treated with respect and love. Don't settle for crumbs when you deserve the whole feast." The real magic of Charles and Amelia's story isn't just that they got back together. It's that they both became fundamentally better people through their pain. Charles shed his arrogance, entitlement, and toxic pride. He learned empathy, humility, and genuine gratitude. Amelia shed her dependence on external validation and her tendency to accept mistreatment to keep peace. She found her voice, her strength, and her non-negotiable boundaries. "We're not the same people who got married 20 years ago," Amelia often reflects. "We're not even the same people who fell apart 7 years ago. We're new people who chose to build something new together." Marcus, Charles's brother, remains close to both of them. He often says, I never thought I'd see my brother again after he became that cruel person. I genuinely thought he was lost forever. But Amelia, with her grace and strength, helped him find his way back. Not by enabling him or accepting his behavior, but by setting boundaries, demanding change, and showing him what real love looks like. One evening, sitting on the porch of their modest house, the one they bought together 5 years after reconciling, Charles and Amelia watched the sunset together. The kids were inside doing homework. The business was running smoothly. Life was peaceful. "Do you ever think about how different things could have been?" Charles asked quietly. "If I hadn't been such a fool, if I just appreciated what I had?" Amelia squeezed his hand. "Sometimes. But I also think about what we learned from the pain. You learned humility and gratitude. I learned strength and self-worth. Our kids learned resilience and the importance of accountability. Maybe we needed to break to become who we were meant to be." "That's a generous way to see it," Charles said with a sad smile. "It's the only way I can see it without getting bitter," Amelia replied honestly. "I choose to believe that even terrible things can teach us valuable lessons if we're willing to learn." They sat in comfortable silence as the sky turned orange and pink. "I love you," Charles whispered. "Not the way I thought I loved you before, when it was really just need and habit. I love you now with full awareness of who you are, what you've done for me and what you've overcome. You're the strongest, most beautiful person I've ever known." Amelia smiled, tears gathering in her eyes. "And I love you, the real you, not the cruel person you became for those years. This version of you who's humble and grateful and actually sees me. That's who I fell in love with again. Now I want to ask you something, and I really want to hear your honest answer. What would you have done if you were in Amelia's shoes? After everything Charles put her through, the mockery, the cheating, the physical abuse, the abandonment, would you have taken him back? Even after he'd changed, even after years of proving himself, could you have forgiven that level of betrayal? Or would you have walked away forever and built your life completely separate from him? Let me know in the comments. I'm genuinely curious because I know people have strong feelings about this. And listen, if you believe what Charles did was absolutely wrong, if you think women like Amelia deserve respect regardless of their size, shape, age, or appearance, if you believe in holding people accountable for their actions while also believing in second chances when someone truly changes, then I need you to do something for me right now. Hit that subscribe button. Seriously, click it right now. This channel is dedicated to telling real, unfiltered stories about real people facing real challenges and real consequences. We don't sugarcoat the ugly parts. We don't make excuses for bad behavior. We tell the truth, even when it's uncomfortable and complicated. And if you appreciate that kind of raw honesty, if you want more stories that make you think and feel and question your own beliefs, then you belong in this community. Like this video if it affected you emotionally, if it made you think about how you treat people or how you allow yourself to be treated. If it reminded you to appreciate the people who stand by you through the difficult times. If it made you realize that pride and arrogance destroy what love and humility build. Share this video with someone who needs to hear this message. Maybe it's someone going through marriage problems. Maybe it's someone who's forgotten what their partner sacrificed for them. Maybe it's someone who, like Charles in his worst moments, has let success or status make them cruel to the people who love them most. Maybe it's someone who, like Amelia, needs to be reminded that their worth isn't determined by other people's opinions. Leave a comment telling us where you're watching from and what lesson you personally took from this story. This community is global, and one of my favorite things is seeing people from every corner of the world engaging with these stories, sharing their perspectives, and supporting each other. And if you think this story was powerful and moving, wait until you hear the next one. Trust me, you don't want to miss it. Before I go, I want to leave you with one final crucial thought. Life has a way of teaching us lessons we desperately don't want to learn. For Charles, that lesson came in the brutal form of losing absolutely everything he'd taken for granted. His job, his status, his health, his mobility, and nearly his life. For Amelia, the lesson came through devastating pain that forced her to find strength she didn't know existed within her. But here's the beautiful, hopeful thing about hard lessons. Once you truly learn them, once you internalize them at a soul-deep level, they transform you completely. Charles is genuinely a better man today because of his mistakes and their consequences. Not because of the mistakes themselves, but because he did the hard work of genuine change. Amelia is a stronger, more self-aware woman today because of the pain she endured. Not because the pain was good, but because she refused to let it destroy her. And their children, Precious and Junior, are wiser and more emotionally intelligent than most adults because they witnessed both destruction and redemption. They saw their father at his absolute worst, and then watched him do the years of difficult work required to become someone worth respecting again. They saw their mother at her lowest point, and then watched her rebuild herself from nothing into someone powerful and successful. So whatever you're going through right now in your own life, whatever mistakes you've made or pain you're carrying or relationships that feel broken beyond repair, I want you to know something important. Your story isn't finished. You can change. You can grow. You can learn. You can rebuild. But you have to be willing to do 3 incredibly difficult things. First, you have to face the complete truth about yourself and your actions without making excuses or shifting blame. Charles couldn't heal until he stopped justifying his cruelty and took full responsibility. Second, you have to humble yourself enough to accept help, even from people you've hurt. Charles had to let Amelia take care of him when he was completely vulnerable, which required shedding all his pride and entitlement. Third, you have to commit to consistent change over time, not just temporary improvement when people are watching. Charles had to prove through years of right action that he'd genuinely changed, not just said he'd changed. Remember something crucial. Only people who support lies, manipulation, cruelty, and pride would refuse to join a community dedicated to truth, accountability, growth, and genuine second chances. So hit that subscribe button right now and join our family of people who believe that broken things can be fixed, that broken people can heal, and that broken relationships can sometimes be restored stronger than they were before. Thank you for watching this entire story. Thank you for caring about these characters and their journey. Thank you for believing that people can change, and that forgiveness, while difficult and complex, is possible. Thank you for being the kind of person who thinks deeply about relationships, respect, and redemption. I'll see you in the next story. Until then, treat the people in your life with kindness, appreciation, and genuine respect. Value those who stand by you when you have nothing, because they're the real treasure. And never, ever forget that pride might help you climb to the top, but only humility, gratitude, and love keep you there. Peace and blessings to all of you. Remember, pride destroys what love builds. Never forget the people who stood by you when you had nothing. True beauty exists in the heart, not in the mirror. Forgiveness, though difficult and complex, is the key to freedom. And sometimes, the hardest lessons teach us the most valuable truths about ourselves and what truly matters in life. At Virtuous Stories, we love you,